if we're now led by the Holy Spirit as to how we are to live and function, even to do ministry, why do we need to study the details of all of this stuff about the tabernacle? Does it even fit in the new covenant or the renewed covenant? Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, Day 4, the Torah portion, Truma. And yes, we are still in chapter 25. Today we begin with verse 10, which reads, "And they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And you shall overlay it with clean gold inside and outside. You shall overlay it, and you shall make on it a molding of gold all around." So we have a box, inside, outside, all covered in gold, with a perimeter at the top, a lip, if you will, a molding, in which inside of sits the lid that has the 2 cherubim on it. Now, verse 12 and following says, "And you shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in its 4 corners, 2 rings on one side, 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. And shall put the poles into the rings on the side of the ark, to lift up the ark by them." And then notice verse 15 that says, "The poles are in the rings of the ark." And then this command, "They are not taken from it." So once the poles are inserted through the rings, one pole through 2 rings on one side, another pole through 2 rings on the opposite side, for the purpose of picking up, putting on the shoulder, and there are selected Kohanim, priests, who are to carry the ark. Once the poles are placed in through the rings, they're never to be taken out of it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in Solomon's writings on this, in his ancient commentary, so it would seem, the dimensions of the ark and the poles, and configured alongside the dimensions of the Kedoshim, the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, the poles would have protruded through the veil. There wasn't enough room for them to be properly situated. In other words, the ark with the poles was too big to fit in the room. But it did. But how? Well, it's a supernatural thing that took place there, obviously. Now, let's go back a little bit. So we understand now these poles are covered in gold. The rings are on the sides. The box is covered in gold. It's a heavy box. This is not a light object. The poles or staves in Hebrew is the plural word, badim. If you want to transliterate B as in boy, A-D as in David, I-M, badim. And the meaning of this word is to be separate, to be a part of, but be separate from. The first time that it is used is in the book of Genesis, or Bereshit chapter 2, where Yah determines it is not good for man to be, and here we use this word as it's translated, alone. The resolve of man being it's not good for him to be alone is that Yah takes a part of him, separates him, and yet they are one. A part of, but separate. It's also used over in the book of Job chapter 18. And in verse number 13, it says, "It devours parts, badim, of his skin. The firstborn of death devours his badim parts." It's used twice in that verse. King James translates the word as strength. It's better to be translated as parts here in the Scriptures version. And so we understand then it's also used as referencing branches of the tree. They are a part of, but they're separate. It's a separate element of a separate issue of, struggling for a word here. Branches are of the tree, but they're separate from the tree in that the whole tree is not a branch. It's a trunk, it's leaves. There's a part of the tree. It's a branch. And so you get the idea, it's a part of, but separate from. Now, this easily, in my mind at least, it goes over to 1 Corinthians chapter number 12, where in verse 4 and following it says, "And there are different kinds of gifts, but of the same Spirit. There are different kinds of services, but the same Master. And there are different kinds of working, but it is the same Elohim who is working all in all. And to each one is given the manifestation of the Spirit for profiting." We're then taught about the spiritual gifts, the 9 gifts of the Spirit, it's been called, how that there are diverse giftings that are sown among the body, but they are separate as how they are distributed. And so the poles perhaps are a symbol to us, of the gifts of the Spirit. Now, they are inserted through rings, and here, and again in the Hebrew, is taba'at. And it references a ring, a signet ring, a ring of one's authority. In ancient times, one would take his signet ring and push it into soft wax to give a seal of his authority, to seal up a document. And so the signet ring here represents authority as it relates to the gifts. The gifts are that are of Yeshua. It is Yeshua's giftings sown among the body. These are his gifts. And therefore, the gifts are to be used for his purposes and for his honor under his authority. The goal of the staves into the rings is to be able to pick up the ark of Yah's presence, which contains the tablets of his word, and move so that Israel can move. Let's take it then to the analogy that we've just drawn. The gifts of the Holy Spirit, as they operate within the body of Messiah, they are designed then under his authority that is attached to his word to be picked up and moved as he would direct, so that the body can move, so that Israel can move forward at the Father's direction. What we're not allowed to do is then take out the poles and use the ministry gifts for our own purposes. They must always be attached to the signet ring of Yeshua's authority. A ministry gift such as prophecy is not allowed to be used for the honor, prestige, or promotion of the individual. Neither is it allowed to be used for the promotion or prestige of a group. You can't just stand up and prophesy well-meaning words to a congregation to encourage them, lift them up, and make them feel better. You must speak as under the direction of Yeshua and how he would have you to say. Now, it's also to be understood that not just everybody can pick up these staves. It is to be done under priestly authority. The rabbis make an interesting comment in that when the priest picked up the staves to move the ark, it wasn't so much that they carried the ark, but the power of the ark lifted them up and the ark carried them. The gifts under Yeshua's authority through priestly oversight is designed to supernaturally move the body, the presence of Yah and Israel into the next direction and the next location. Think about these things, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, shalom.